Today my video or podcast or whatever you want to call it is, can you trust a building inspector? Now I can't tell you if you could trust a building inspector or you can't trust a building inspector, but I could tell you what my experiences are. And I think that's the very first thing I should do, is just tell you my experiences, and then you could judge for yourself. Now the first time when they started this stuff, you got to understand there was no inspectors, no code officials, there was no licensing, there was nothing back in the 50s and 60s. And I grew up in the 60s, started working late 60s up into the 70s and beyond. It didn't start until the 90s probably. But the first time when they started all this code book stuff and the inspectors, I was working on a stone job and I only had one day left. And I was working, just happened to be working right where the plans were. You know, on a construction site, they had the plans outside under a big porch. Here comes this guy down the street, and he comes over, he starts looking at the plans. And I'm not saying anything. I only got one day left. And then he stops and looks at me, he says, I want you to do this, I want you to do that, I want you to do the other thing. And I stood up, I threw my hands up and says, let me tell you something. When I went to law school, the only guy who interprets the plans is the guy who signed them. Now, if you want me to do something, you put your name on it, you put your license number on it, and you write on those plans what you want me to do. And the guy looked at me, and he looked at the plans, and he looked at me, and he looked at the plans. He looked at me and said, you're doing a good job. And he ran down the road. I never seen the guy again. The guy who was with me said, I can't believe you did that. But this is what I found out. First thing they want is the money. The very first thing, they want the money. They want to tell you what to do, but they don't want the liability. I'm going to say it again. They want the money. They want to tell you what to do, but they don't want the liability. So I'm going to explain it to you. Like I said, there was none of this stuff until it developed. And you're going to find two types of inspectors. You're going to find the reasonable, the God-fearing, the rational individual that has good faith. Then you're going to get the little Napoleon good old boys who have self-interest in everything. And they're the people that ruined the name for all the inspectors. Second time an inspector, I actually owned a house. I was flipping houses, and I was working on the side of the building, and the guy come up. First it was a councilman. He says, you need a permit for that. I says, no, I'm just repairing something. Oh, you need a repair pit for that. I says, no, I don't. I'm just repairing something. They want to tell you things that ain't true just so they can get the money. And then the inspector came up. He says, you have to use a power washer for that. And I said, I don't think so. He goes, oh, yeah. I says, is that in the book? He goes, oh, yeah. I said, where's your office at? Well, it's down here. I said, what time are you going to be at that office? Oh, I'll be there in such and such a time. And so I went down there. I said, okay, I want to see where it says that in the book. He started going through the book. He said, I don't have time to find it now. Do what you're going to do. So you got to watch these people. They lie to you. So going for the permit, we had this incident where the sidewalk was bad. Someone tripped over it. The guy wanted it fixed. We were between jobs. So, okay, we could fix the sidewalk, go for the permit. So he goes over to the city hall, the clerk's office, and says, I want to get a permit to fix my sidewalk. Oh, you can't get a permit because the guy's on vacation. He won't be back for a few weeks. And he said the right thing. He says, okay, if someone else trips over it, you take the liability. I'm sending you a letter in the mail. Got a call back a half hour later. I guess the inspector on vacation. Go ahead, you guys fix the sidewalk and we'll take care of that later. You have to know what to say and how to deal with these people. So then they started licensing. Everybody had to get a license if you wanted to work in a certain town. Now, in my area up there was 66 different municipalities plus the two main cities. So I didn't really even want the job, but the contractor that I did a lot of work for, Mike, you got to come over to this town and do the work. Okay. So I just have to get a permit or a license to work there, and I get in there. The guy gives me a hard time. Who are you? What are you doing here? I says, I have to go fix this guy's house. I need a license. I can't give you a license right now. So I left. I didn't really want the job, but I was talking to my lawyer buddy. He wrote me a nice little letter. You're going to learn to write letters. Sent the letter to the guy. They called him up. Everybody stayed away from me after that. You have to learn to write letters. They came up with my town and they started it. They gave this guy, he's a young guy, he's going to come and tell me what to do on my jobs. So I came up with what you call an inspector information sheet. And you have to laugh because I gave it to them. And what it says is here, I'll see if I can get a copy for you. It says, what's your name, your address, this is to the inspector, your insurance company, are you a member of an inspections association, are you a registered architect, are you a registered engineer, what other certifications do you possess, how many years of experience do you have, do you review all plans of construction intentions, do you provide a consumer notices of all ordinances, resolutions, rules, regulations, privacy notices and statements, do you have a board of appeals, do you keep a logbook of all the activity, what inspections you will be making during the inspection period, and when will you inspect them? Please write down the code number for each of the inspections, when you will inspect them. In the interest of health, safety, and welfare, explain how you interpret each code. And then the purpose of the back page was the purpose, and it's hard to read here, but just for the heck of it. In the interest of health, safety, and welfare, that there's no conflict of interest. Officials must disclose all conflict of interest. A copy of all pertaining codes and expertly explained, and the property owner's rights. When you have property rights in Pennsylvania, it was you have the right of control, the right of exclusion, the right of mortgage, the right of, I forget, there's two other rights, but you got them there. Then the basic fundamental rights to work. See, here's what's going on. In the United States Constitution, we have what we call rights, and then we have civil liberties, umbrellas they call them. They're underneath the Constitution. Like you have the right to breathe the air. You have a right to children. You have a right to make a living. So, I'm pretty up on that stuff. So all conditional permits. In other words, I want them to fill this whole paper out. And then the city council guys, Mike, what the heck's wrong? What are you doing and everything? I says, look, he could come and tell me what to do, but I want it in writing, and he's taking a liability, and you guys too. Well, we had a meeting, and we decided that before I do a job, he's going to come on the job and look at it. I'm going to tell him what I'm going to do, and he's going to approve it. Okay. So I have this job. It was putting in a foundation, stone patio on top of that, a porch, and then the stone around and the steps. And I had it all written down. I probably still got it in my files. And I put in there, okay, what size, it's right there with the owner and him, what size is the steps coming down? I had 3 steps coming down. He says you can go 8 inches, and I forget what they were out. And this is what I'm doing, and this is the footer, how big, I want this, okay, everything. So I had the 3 copies, one to the owner, I had one. He said, okay, you sign the paper, one of the copies, and give it to me, and I did. Then I gave him my copy, I said, you sign it. He wouldn't sign it. You know why he wouldn't sign it? He don't want the liability. And this is a big issue with inspectors. They try to hide from liability. So I'm going to try to put my little inspection thing on the back. I don't use it now, but maybe you should. Complain, 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 complain. Let me tell you about complaining. There's a First Amendment right we got. It's RAPS, R-A-P-P-S. That's if you go to school for law. It's religion, association, petition, the press, and speech. Now those guys who put this all together, you could petition your government and complain as much as you want. That's your right. And the only duty they have as a government official is to protect your rights. You got that sink in, because if I could, I'd dig up Ben Franklin and John Adams and Thomas Jefferson and kiss their ass. Because if we didn't have that, we'd be screwed in this country. So I use it as much as I can. Let me give you another instance about what you got to look out for. You have to look out. Here's what happened. I had interest in a piece of property, a house, down in the Orlando area. And 30 years before, the woman who owned the house put an application in to have the pool. So they approved the application, but she never put the pool in. 30 years later, she goes to sell the house, and guess what? Oh, she got taxed for 30 years, and they're complaining, you can't sell the house till you get the final inspection report. Who dropped the ball there? Now, don't you think if that was your house, you'd be a little pissed off and a little wary of what goes on in this government machinery? Now, here's another thing you got to watch out for. And I'm not talking about the honest part of the contractors or the inspectors or code officials. I'm talking about the good old boys who are in the political scene and they have self-interest in them. They might go to say a house with an old lady in it, or there's people who don't know what to do, and they say, we're going to condemn this house because this foundation is bad. And they'll say, well, geez, how much is it going to cost? Well, I have a good friend who's a contractor, Honest Jim, and he'll give you an estimate, and it'll be $40,000. Well, guess who helps Honest Jim on the weekend is the code official or the inspector. She said, I can't do that. Maybe I better sell the house. Well, don't worry, ma'am. I have friends that buy these kind of houses. Now, I could tell you, I could go and fix that foundation for $1,000 if that was really the problem. But you got to watch out for that, because that goes on too. One time I did a job in they called it third-class city, so you got to go get a license. But what happened was they were putting this sign up, and I guess the architect figured the sign up, and they wanted at the time, 20 years ago, $6,000 to put the sign up. And it was all artificial stone. You had to drive 2 hours. You had a guy make it. I said, I could give you a real stone sign for $3,000, and I'll have it in 3 days. And so I went down and got my license. At the time it was $75 for 6 months or something. The good old boys. And I did the job. Me and my dad went and did it. We did it, and it came out beautiful. It was a beautiful job. As soon as I was just leaving with the truck, they're up there taking pictures. And then, because I kind of undercut them, and, they're the good old boys, they had a firm from Philadelphia send me a letter in the mail saying that I had a business inside the city and I wasn't paying taxes. That's like retribution. So I wrote back, I don't have a thing. I don't have a business in the city, and then that was the end of that. But that's another thing you got to watch for. Complain, and then write lots of letters. Everybody gets a letter. Got to the point, it all got around. Mike Haduck is a nut. Stay away from the guy. Don't go near him. He's only going to cause trouble. And that was pretty good for me. Anyway, one day I'm driving by the Attorney General's office, and I remember when this stuff first came out, they had a meeting with all the contractors, and I complained about it then. But I went into the office. I just wanted to see what was going on. So I went in there, and I said, I'd like to talk to the Attorney General. He says, well, the main guy isn't here now, but we'll have you talk to one of our other people, which they're all lawyers. And I went in there in the room. He says, what's the problem, sir? He says, well, I want to complain about all this inspection stuff you guys got going on, and code officials and licensing. I gave him a bit about me being a veteran. I should have the right to work and all that stuff. And he started giving me, oh, well, this is official, and this is, and I said, what do you see, second-class citizen wrapped over my head here? Oh, no, sir, oh, no. I told him it's all crooked. You guys know what the hell's going on. And he says, listen, everybody's complaining about it. Please, he said, everybody's complaining about it. And if there's something really wrong in our area, the part that they do, come and see me. We'll see what we can do about it. I said, okay. And I left, and I never had to do anything over there again. Now, I would go out with my brother in New Jersey, and there's little defenses you could use if you're not in with the good old boys. And he would always tell officials that come in, oh, yeah, I'm doing this. Yeah, oh, there's my brother. Meet my brother, the lawyer. And I'm not a lawyer. But he would say that, and all of a sudden the whole thing would change. Anyway, there was a house in New Jersey we were building right next to us. It was a monster of a house. I don't know what the guy did or invented, legal company, I don't know what he did. Put a fence around the whole place. And out in front of there you had a gate where you come in and the office right there with the guy in there. Nobody came in, nobody came out without signing that logbook, what they were there for, when they came in, what they left, and they leave a comment. And he went and he told the city, he said, before I even start this, I'm going to warn you, if you cause me backups and cause me all this stuff, I'm going to keep a log of it and I'm going to sue you at the end. Duty, breach, causation, damages. Proximate cause, actual cause. Well, he did and he won. So here's my advice. Whatever job you're on and you have to deal with an inspector, keep a logbook. Make sure, especially when I did like a government job, someone come on that, I wrote down when he came, what he said, and what time he left. You keep a logbook. And then you got something definite, who said what, when, and where, and why. So that's another defense. I went down to one of these third-class cities. This guy wanted me to help this woman, join up a brick job. I guess the good old boy's charging a fortune. She wanted to see what it cost. I looked at it. Geez, a day and a half, a couple $100, whatever it was. I guess they wanted to charge her thousands. So I went down to the third-class city, into the office, and I said, I need a license. I understand I have to have a license to work in the city. And she went, huh. And I said, what do you mean, huh? She goes, you can't get a license to work in the city. I said, why not? I gave her the veteran story, the whole bit, and they started complaining. Then the guy comes down from the office. What can I help you with? I said, I want to know why I can't work in this city. Well, you did, and it went on and on and on, and I'm complaining. And that a couple of days later, I went to the council meeting. I explained to them, something's going on here. I even videotaped it. I wouldn't know where that videotape is, but I videotaped it, complaining. Then I went back, and I said, I want a license. The guy says, to work in this city, you have to take a test. I said, okay, where do I take the test? They gave me the phone number. I call up. It's in Wisconsin. You know how far Wisconsin is from Pennsylvania? So I go back and said, it's Wisconsin. Oh, we made a mistake. Here's the phone number. It's down in Scranton. Okay. So I go down there. No one's there for 3 days. No one answers the phone. Finally, I catch a guy there. I said, I'm here to take a test. He said, what kind of test are you going to want to take? I said, a masonry test. He said, there's no such thing as a masonry test. I says, well, I need a statement from you saying there's no such thing as a masonry test. He says, no, I'm not giving you no statement. I said, if you don't give me a statement, I'm going to call the cops. He said, I'm not giving you a statement. I called the cops. The cops came. It was in music, as a matter of fact. And wrote out a police report. He said, so I went back to the city with the police report. He said, there's no such thing as a test. And then the lawyer basically threw it at me. Now this means war. So call the cops again. They don't come. Why? Because they're in the city. And so I walked over to the police station. He says, I called you twice. How come you don't come? He goes, listen, son, I know what they're doing over there. I don't know why they do that. He said, go see the judge. So I went up and I sat there with the judge, and he said, I can't help it. I don't make the laws or the rules. He says, if you work in this city without a license, I have to charge you $1,000 fine. And I said, you tell me you don't know what goes down in that city? He goes, no. I went home feeling a little defeated this time. Then I look in the paper. He's married to the head councilwoman, the head of the council. I wrote him a letter. I got that letter back so fast, I think it was the day after. And I went down there and goes, oh, we'll just give you a license. In the meantime, I wrote a letter complaining to the legal system, because these couple of judges went to jail down in my area. It was kids for cash deal, and everybody was scared. And then the letter came back to me that I complained to the judicial board or whatever it was. It was the wrong address, and I took it for a sign, like from God. Don't go no farther with it, because there's a little thing is You usually complain, you'll get what you want, but if you go too far, you might get bit. So that might be a little lesson there for you. Now, if you think it's only me that goes through all this stuff, there's a video out by Steve Leto, and this is the picture of it. I want you to look at it. Dozens of code violations, home building inspector approved. Another guy, the guy went in, this builder was building a house, and the inspectors went in and they approved everything the guy did. Okay, so far later, everything was wrong with the building. So what happened was the owner sued him, and he won for breach of contract and breach of warranty. And guess what happened? The judgment didn't get paid. Why not? Because a lot of builders, I'm always afraid to work for builders because they're always on the verge of bankruptcy. They had no money to pay them. So then they go and sued the city because the city inspectors inspected this all the way through and they took the money for it. And because the county didn't have insurance for this, even though they had the inspectors and hired them, they filed for government immunity, and the judge threw the case out. Government immunity. Oh, the inspectors, they're not responsible for that. That's the way they treat you. They want the money, they want to tell you what to do, but they don't want the liability. So look at that video. That's a real good video. He's one of my favorite YouTubers. I like to watch his stuff. Now, when all these little towns came out with all this licensing, it put a damper on everything, and we actually started getting rid of our employees because it wasn't worth it. You don't want to go in a fight with the guy just to work. And then what we would start to do is team up. In other words, we just get me, and then I'd work with the excavator and work with the carpenter in that town where they were. Then after that, they come out and they did a licensing for the whole state. $50 for 2 years, and they had to prove you had insurance. Then they had some laws where you can't take more than one third down. But just because you have a license, like if you have a car license, doesn't mean you can't take the car and go 100 miles an hour and crash through a police stop, or it doesn't mean that you can't take the car and rob a bank with it. License is just a joke. They're just giving you permission, and then the fly-by-nights are going to do what they want anyway. They're criminals, and they've been in jail and out of jail so many times they don't care. There's a difference between a building inspector and a home inspector. When I was in real estate, they'd call up a home inspector. A home inspector is hired by the buyer usually. They go in and they inspect the home, and they come and they say what's wrong with it. They go in and they take pictures, they take a picture of the roof or the plumbing. They inspect the box, they inspect the furnace, and they come around and then they give them a report, a full inspection report. You won't get that from a building inspector. You get an inspection report, and that guy's giving you an opinion of what he thinks the house should be. So there's a difference there. But even those guys, once in a while, because they know they could come back and get an extra $50 or $100, I think with the VA it was that way, to re-inspect it, to make sure you fixed it. There's a little con game in that too. But, something like that, you could expect it, but I don't expect it from a building inspector. And then you got the city inspectors where you got an occupancy permit. So what do you have to do to get an occupancy permit? Well, the town or the city will send the guy in. They'll walk right by the homeless guy. They don't care about him. They walk up to the porch and they say, well, that'll be $120 for me to go in there. And if you fail it and I have to come back and re-inspect it, it'll be another $50. I've been through that a lot of times. They want to come in. Do you have the fire alarms? Is the place livable? But they'll walk right by the homeless guy with the tent. So that's questionable to me too. Now, some of these building inspectors are what they call third party, and they're under the color of law. That means they're still kind of protected by immunity a little bit, but at the same time, they're private and they have their own insurance. But I think if you're going to be an inspector and come in my house, my property, you should have to take an oath, just like a police officer or anybody else. When you're walking a private property, it's another thing I don't agree with. I was still doing some jobs up in Pennsylvania, And all of a sudden in our town they changed inspectors. Well, I don't know who this guy is. So I was talking to the councilman. He's telling me, oh yeah, this and that. So I called the guy up. I said, I want to get a meeting with you. I want to see what your policies are. Well, I'm really busy this week. Maybe we'll get to that next week. Okay. All right. A week goes by. I call him up again. He said, yeah, I'm really busy again. He says, maybe we could do it next week. Now I already want to start some jobs. Then I call him up the third week. He said, yeah, I'd like to get together. He goes, look, I'm really busy. I have big jobs up at this hospital I have to be doing. I don't have no time for you. I'm thinking, you got the time for the money jobs, don't you? But you ain't got time for my health, safety, and welfare. But we got a little tussle over that. Now I asked a lot of building inspectors if I could interview them and find out what the real deal is. Well, even the guys I knew good, guys that were inspectors and knew good, no way. No one would ever do it. I got one. That was it. Down in Florida, St. Augustine, she was it's called Building Inspector Interview. She was a fire inspector. She used to work for the fire company. She would check like the hotels and everything. And she was reasonable. And one thing about her, she was the flower child in the movie Woodstock, 1969. She was the flower child. You even got a little scene in there. Check that one out. Now, when I was leaving, I wrote a letter to the Bureau of Labor of Industry. And I said, listen, I want anymore a privacy notice. When I go in, I want a privacy notice. I want to know where my information's going to, just because of that thing down in Orlando house. I want to make sure that other contractors don't know what I'm charging. I want to know where all the information is going to. Number 2, I want a consumer notice. I want to know what all my rights and responsibilities are and who I can complain to if I'm not satisfied. And number 3, I want a full and complete inspection report, just like a home inspector. Because a lot of these guys will come in and will go, oh, that's okay, or I want you to do this and do that, and then they'll walk away, and I'll say, well, the inspector told, oh, I didn't tell you to do that. Can you trust them? Now, everybody has a duty, even a private citizen. Like, they got in touch with me one time, the authorities, and they asked me to take a video off. I had a video on, it was called Breaking Out of Prison for Beginners. Breaking Out of Prison for Beginners. Now, you've seen my videos on the pyramids and the castles and the Great Wall. I could go through a stone wall in no time. Well, there are a lot of complaints because all these prisoners were getting out. So as a courtesy, I took the video off, Breaking Out of Prison for Beginners. But at the same time, look at my side of the fence here. Who do I go to complain? Bureau of Labor and Industry ain't doing nothing. Maybe I can go to Judge Janine. Maybe I should get Judge Judy. Judge Judy should hear about that. Nope, wait a minute. I got a better idea right here. Can I talk to Elon Musk, please? He's not in right now. Okay, how about the Ramsey guy? Is he in? A lot of bureaucracy going on here. No, he's not in right now, too. Who am I talking to? Donald. Donald, you have these 2 guys count me up. A lot of bureaucracy and nonsense going on here. We got to get rid of it. Thank you. Okay, I'll let you know how the phone call came out. Thanks for watching. I'm Mike Haduck. I'll see you next video.